Well, thank you, Mike, and thank you for that really fine introduction. Hopefully I can live up to some of that. You know, I'm honored today to be here at the flag raising ceremony. The first time, I understand, that this flag will be raised on the new CIC flagpole. What a magnificent setting. It's also great to be back here in the Midwest. Things are a little different out in California, and I'm pleased to be back with all these people here in the Midwest. You know, it is Memorial Day weekend, and this holiday started out with a different name. It was actually called Decoration Day. It was set aside after the Civil War as a day for family members, comrades, and other loved ones to go and decorate the graves of those that had fallen in the war. Well, over time, it evolved into a larger holiday to honor all of those that have fallen in the service and given the ultimate sacrifice to our great country. Mike asked me to speak about a year ago because of my background in the military, and he knew that I was coming out with a book called Commanding Excellence, which I'll talk a little bit about later. But you know, my career in the military was brief. I fought during the Cold War. No bullets were flying, and I thought that we had ended war when I retired after my short 5-year career. But lo and behold, just 2 years later, my classmates were involved in a fight in Kuwait and Iraq. I want to talk about the flag for a second, because for all of us, that flag stands for something very special. You know, we live in a time of a lot of division, some social unrest, where people aren't quite sure that they like their neighbors as much as they used to in some cases. But that flag serves as a beacon for us to remind us of our common bond, this love of freedom, this idea that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are God-given rights. And this thought that a nation of people, of, by, and for the people, will always stand. So I mentioned, you know, and you see in your program, I have a book coming out in September. It's not available yet. I can't do a book signing because it's not published yet, but it is. You can get it on pre-order if you're interested. It's about two extraordinary leaders that I had a chance to work under in two extraordinary organizations. And I'll talk a bit about the tank battalion. You know, I was reminded of that tank battalion as the cannon went off, because it was a familiar sound. When that main gun goes off in a tank, there's a lot of percussion, and you certainly feel that. But this tank battalion was unusual. At the time, again, it was the Cold War, and the truest test of a unit's readiness was to go out to a place called the National Training Center in the Mojave Desert of California, and you'd fight against a simulated Soviet opponent. It was all computer controlled. It was the biggest game of laser tag you've ever seen. And, you know, most units would go out there and they'd win 2 or 3 of 9 battles, roughly 9 battles that you'd fight. The opposing forces, as they were deemed, the Soviet simulated opponent, they outnumbered you 4 to 1. They knew the terrain. They were always full strength. They had super high morale. They had great leadership. It was just very difficult to beat them. One time, a unit went out there and won 5 of 9 battles, and the Army studied that, wanted to understand how they had done it. Well, the task force I got to be a part of, we went out there and went 9-0, won every single battle. Doctrine changed. We spent time teaching every battalion commander and the generals of the Army what we had done, and what General Schwarzkopf and his troops at the small unit level went into Iraq and Kuwait in 1991, and what we did here in the 2000s in Iraq. A lot of it was what we had developed at 468. And so in trying to describe that experience, I thought it would be best to take us on a little bit of a history lesson, because it reminds me of our country, a time when we came together. Let's think about, if I can, take you back to early 1941. You know, there were wars going on in Europe, and there was a war going on between China and Japan, and there was a poll conducted in the first week of 1941, and 72% of the American population you know, we were content to provide arms, we were content to be the arsenal of democracy, but we did not want to be involved in those foreign wars. We saw it as somebody else's war. Then one day, everything changed. Everything changed. In the greatest miscalculation in military history, we were violently and brutally attacked by the Empire of Japan at Pearl Harbor. And this great nation came together in ways that no one thought possible. The Japanese they had a plan. They thought they could cripple the U.S. fleet, grab a whole bunch of territory, and that, you know, that peace-loving American population, they'd be okay with that, and we could sue for peace, or they could sue for peace, and maintain the territory that they'd taken. What an utter misunderstanding of the American character. We became, as a nation, in that period of time, what I had a chance to experience inside that armor battalion. Three magical elements kind of defined the character of that environment and the character of those times. The first is that as a nation, we had an absolute clarity of purpose. Win the war. Unconditional surrender. It defined what was important, what was most important, and what was unimportant. We structured our whole country to achieve it, defined the size of the military, retooled our industry, engaged our scientists and engineers in some phenomenal creative exercises and inventions. Second, we had, for that time, this universal passion to achieve that victory, to achieve that purpose. It was meaningful to everyone. Just about every family had somebody that they knew that they sent to that war, and just about everyone in the country was involved in some way in fighting it. You know, Rosie the Riveter arose because millions of women went into the workforce for the first time. Millions of people participated in collecting the materials. We didn't have the rubber, we didn't have some of the steel, we didn't have some of the other things we needed to be able to fight the war effectively. War bonds were sold in unprecedented proportions. It was a universal passion to achieve that. And lastly, we unleashed a level of creativity that, quite frankly, was phenomenal. You think about, in that brief period of time, some of the inventions that came forth. Now, they were all directed at trying to win that war, but still, they were inventions that changed the world. You know, sonar, radar, the microwave oven, the jet engine, the computer, the rocket engine, and the dawning of the atomic age. But perhaps the greatest creation of that period was this military and industrial superpower called the United States of America. What we did together was incredible. Our nation outproduced, in the materials of war, ships and tanks and bullets and bombs, every other nation on the planet combined for that period of time. Just phenomenal. The whole country was like that 468 armor. It was a period of time where some have written, maybe it was our greatest time. I think our greatest times, though, are still to come. There was an award-winning movie that was written about a battle in that, and about a flag raising in that war. It's called Flags of Our Fathers. I remember the scene at the beginning of that movie. It's a flyover of the American Armada headed to Iwo Jima. And there are a vast array of landing craft and destroyers and cruisers and battleships and supply ships and this incredible assembly of military power. And it was clear that, boy, those Japanese had massively miscalculated the will of the American people. And in that movie also a flag was raised. That flag was raised on Iwo Jima, and it became an iconic photograph, I think in part because it represented the entire country's efforts. You know, the building of that war machine, the fighting men and women that went out and fought for it, and we raised that flag in victory because it became iconic because it represented everyone. This Memorial Day, we honor those who weren't able to see the final raising of the flag in the battles that they fought. You know, from the Revolution to the Civil War to World War I to World War II to Korea to Vietnam to Kuwait and Iraq and Afghanistan and Iraq again, there's been a lot of people that have given the ultimate sacrifice so that we can have and enjoy the freedoms that we have today. Some of the best human beings I know were classmates that have fallen in the service of the country. I ask you to think of them as this flag goes up. Their sacrifice has meaning. And I know we all feel that. Their sacrifice has meaning, and every time that flag goes up, we owe them a bit of a debt of gratitude. I'd ask you to check out Commanding Excellence. It's a book about these two extraordinary leaders, and if we can have that kind of extraordinary leadership in our country, it will do wonderful things for us. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.